Welcome to The Real Dope, a podcast for anyone walking alongside someone battling addiction, based on the powerful book, The Real Dope on Dealing with an Addict, by sisters Elizabeth Brand and Meridith Elliott Powell. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share authentic stories, and provide the honest guidance. Let's begin today's journey and turn survival into strength.
Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is 11 a.m. Eastern. It is time for The Real Dope, the show designed for you, people who love, support, and quite frankly, just have to deal with addicts. I'm hanging out here with my sister, Beth Brand. Right? Yeah. And as I always like to remind you, we are not therapists, we are not doctors. We are just two people that have loved, supported, and had to deal with a lot of addicts in our lives. And from that journey, we found that there just isn't much support out there for people who love addicts, for people who have to deal with addicts. So we just wanted to design this show for frank conversation, gut wrenchingly honest opinions, and maybe a little bit support that you need to handle all the challenges that you're dealing with every single day. So, Beth, what's on tap for today?
Today, we're gonna talk about why your recovery matters. It's gonna be positive, not all negative.
All right,
But
let's go ahead.
why it's important that you see yourself as an enabler and work your own recovery.
When you live through this, you really do turn survival into strength because I think a situation like this either crushes you or it makes you. So, let's go ahead and dive into the topic today of why your recovery matters. And I'll kick off because
Okay.
we were back there. I couldn't remember what we were talking. Thank God for my sister as you get to know us better. She's definitely the detail organized and follow through one of the two of us. But I think, if I can just say it plainly, I mean, your recovery matters because if you don't recover, your addict really stands no chance. And I also think more importantly from that, if you don't recover, you'll just repeat this behavior over and over again. It reminds me of addicts who recover but never really deal with what drove the addiction in the first place. It reminds me of going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and watching people chain smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and eat donuts like it was going out of style. They had just taken the alcohol out of their mouth and moved in another addiction. So I think your recovery really matters because until you get better, you're in no position to help your addict, and until you get better, you're in no position to help yourself.
And even if your addict dies, you are still left with yourself. And if you haven't acknowledged your role and your own illness, you're just gonna go back into those patterns. Just like someone who has an addiction issue ruins their own life and ruins the life of everyone around them, somebody with an enabling issue does we do the same thing.
Oh, all
We
day
don't need an
long.
active addict to ruin other people's lives and our own.
No, but it reminds me of, our grandmother McShane.
Mhm.
I mean, our grandmother McShane lived with our grandfather who he was an addict, he was a lot of things, just not a very, very nice man, at all. And because she didn't get help, because she wouldn't recover, she dragged our father back into it, and with our father back into it, she that dragged the 4 of us into it, which dragged to the next generation,
Mhm.
into it, and so until you realize I mean, how can you really think if you live with an addict, um, that you don't have a problem? I realize it's a hard, realization to come to, but until that happens, there's no chance of really, really turning things around.
I mean, Grammy, that's what we called her, she ruined or she didn't ruin, but she harmed her son and his wife and all of us, and then our father and mother harmed us with the same and it was enabling. Our dad did become an alcoholic, but he was a kind of a can't beat him, join him alcoholic. He wasn't like that for the beginning of our lives, but I think he became so depressed over his own father, who lived to 90 something, and my father had to take our father had to take care of him, that, but, I mean, obviously, that generation had no inkling into enabling or anything else. And, but that behavior still passed from and actually on our mother's side, they were all enablers. There were loads of alcoholics in that family, and things were just ignored. And even when they became a family without alcoholics, they are still giant at ignoring things without mentioning any names.
I was keynoting yesterday and I gave this as an example. It was a women's group and we were talking about what you need to do to become mentally fit. And I was talking about the importance of managing energy and not managing time. And I was talking about the fact that, I'd been in therapy for years and I was doing really, really well with therapy of the letting, the therapist was working with me of letting Doug, it was his journey. It wasn't my journey. And I didn't need to interfere with that. And I told her, I said, I've done so well, except for when he disappears. He would disappear for days, sometimes weeks at a time. Sometimes he'd be in jail. Sometimes he'd be in the hospital. Sometimes he just would be I don't know where. And eventually he would call me and ask me for money. And I would do really, really well until he called me and asked me for money. And funniest thing she said was, why don't you not pick up the phone? Which I was like, that never even occurred to me. But the second thing she told me was that just one time when he asked me for money, rather than giving him money, because she made me admit the fact that giving him money didn't help. In fact, it made things worse. Bailing him out of jail, he just wound back up in jail. Going and getting him at the hospital, he would just wind up back in the hospital. Paying for an apartment, he just would end up leaving it, not paying the rent. I mean, every ounce of money I gave him never made a single bit of difference. But she said, asked me if one time when he asked me for money, if I would spend that money on myself
Mm,
rather than spending the money on him.
mm.
And her argument was that it takes a lot of energy to deal with an addict. And I'm constantly giving away my energy, but I wasn't doing anything to build my energy back. So the very next time he called me, he asked me for
Oh
$1,000.
my
Now,
gosh.
now this is $1,000, like, I don't know, close to 30 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And and I'll never forget, I was like, oh my God, I got to spend $1,000 on myself. I'd agreed to do it. So I called the Grove Park Inn and I went their spa hadn't been around that long, and I spent $1,000
Oh my
at the spa. But I tell you, I never looked back,
Yeah.
ever looked back from that. Like, it would there was some kinda shift in me that all of a sudden focusing on me wasn't a bad thing, and I didn't have to spend $1,000 to do it, but it was like, "Wait a minute, like, I am throwing things away that are making the problem worse rather than making it better." Versus when I focused back on me, the energy went back into me, which built the capacity that next time he called and wanted something, I had the energy to say no. And no was the best way I could help my addict. That was a really long story. Sorry,
No,
but it's
that
why
is
you're recovering now.
beautiful advice. I just
Yeah.
think of all the money that I poured in to paying hospital bills and paying for drugs because I'm like, I get a bill from the pharmacy or whatever, paying for drugs. If I had taken that money and invested it in me, in
Yeah.
my business, in our son, like that would have been like that is like the most beautiful advice. And it's really what I think, and I know it's what I struggled with. I think it's what a lot of women struggle with because of the way we're socialized in our
Yeah.
culture to put ourselves first. And by doing that, by freeing that space so we can think and we can be creative and we can be who we're meant to be, we make the world a better place.
So
It's like you
so
can
much
be a
so.
frustrated mother. I mean, how many women in our neighborhood growing up who didn't work and really didn't wanna be at home, wanted to work? I mean, I know some women wanna be at home, like, I kinda wanted to be at home, but they were so frustrated that they were mean, like the nuns in our
Yeah.
yeah, they were so frustrated because they didn't have any choices of where to do, and they certainly weren't putting themselves first. Yeah, man, that's excellent advice.
It was just and I love the fact that she made me just promise to do it once because
Yeah,
I think she
that's
knew
powerful.
that if I walked through the exercise,
Yeah.
I would feel it. And I was amazed at I really think I kept helping my addict because I was exhausted. I was
Mhm.
there was nothing left in me. And it was just, it's kind of like when a kid is throwing a fit, you just go, "Oh, I don't care that it's 6 o'clock. Eat the Hershey bar. If you don't eat anything
Exactly.
for dinner, I don't really care."
Mhm,
Like, because you don't do that because you're a bad mother. You do it because you're freaking exhausted.
mhm,
And addicts wear you out.
mhm,
And so it was going through that exercise, I just took this because believe me, it took an entire day at the Omni Grove Park Inn to spend $1,000. And, but there was so much energy back in me that when I got back in the cycle, because I was back in the cycle, I didn't change my life, but I had the energy to deal with that cycle. And I think you said it so well. I had the presence of mind to think. And when I thought I was able to think through, is bailing him out of jail really going to help the situation? And the
mhm,
answer is no. So letting him sit in jail was good for him, it was good for me, it was good for the community, it was good
mhm.
for everybody. But in a state of exhaustion, I couldn't do that. So I think this is really important for anybody who loves an addict, but I think as women, because I've never looked back from that. And I walked through the door, I'd been on the road 5 days and I came through the door and um I'd scheduled a massage and I wasn't gonna be home till like 7:30 and Rob goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to get a massage." He goes, "You've been gone for 5 days." I said, "I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this for
Exactly,
me because
exactly.
I'm exhausted, and if you want me to be nice, I need to rejuvenate. Like, I gotta put some I have given everything to every client I've had." So, understanding that concept, I think, is so important.
Yeah, it's like every time, I go to yoga, Peter's like, "Go, go, get out there," because he knows I come back, like, so happy and
Yeah,
peaceful. Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's I mean, more to it's even the thought process of, "I'm not throwing good money after bad, I'm gonna invest this money, and I'm gonna invest it in me." And so
yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
think
it's
about,
I mean,
like
there's so many good things about that exercise.
think about how much better off you would be if you had all the money back that you'd spent on the addict and you'd invested it in the stock market. You put it in your
Yeah,
401k. You'd done, whatever, saved for your child's college
yeah.
education. I mean, whatever is important. You paid your mortgage off or
Because it's just not gonna solve the problem.
exactly.
Bailing him out of jail, it's not it's just, um, I mean, I think and I write about it in the book that it's the one thing, like, our ship was sinking. I couldn't save Edward, but I could save what I needed to save, so if Edward got better one day, there'd be something there.
Yeah,
Our home would still be there, our child would be healthy, we would be financially because, I mean, it was our car, our refrigerator, everything, the mortgage on our house, everything was going down. As long as I was enabling him, I wasn't paying attention to those things that were keeping the rest of us safe and really making a home for him had he ever gotten better.
another good piece of advice. I think this was the same therapist, but it could have been a different one. But she said to me, she said, "The ship is going down. Help me understand how you going down with the ship
Mhm,
helps anything."
mhm,
And I thought that was such a good visual too. Like, she's like, "You're on a ship and you have the choice to jump or to stay with the ship.
mhm,
Is anybody going to be saved if you stay with the ship?" And
mhm.
then you walk through the exercise of who would be hurt if I didn't jump off.
Exactly.
And it's just a really good visual. But you have to be strong to do this because society tells you that you're first of all, society tells you you have nothing to recover from. Society doesn't really admit that you have a
Mm-mm.
and then society wants you to go down with the ship.
They very much do, and they're invested in it. I know that, people were like I mean, they thought they had their addict that was in their family, and they tossed it off on me. I mean, it was my choice, obviously, I married him and everything, but they're like, He's safe, and it's contained over here.'
Yes.
And if I leave, he's no longer contained, you
Yeah.
know? There's nobody picking up those pieces.
I think that's really important that when you make the decision that your recovery, um, matters. And I think a really good exercise to go through, would be, like, to really put down, um, the benefits of you getting healthier, and then the detriments of you not focusing on your recovery. Because I think you're so in the addiction that it seems selfish to put yourself, first. It
Seems
seems
mean.
selfish. Yeah, it does seem mean. But I also think that, I think one of the greatest ways we support our addict is through role modeling. And if we're not willing to do the work and get the
Live with
help
the
that we need.
fear.
Yeah. How do they look at us when we're basically talking out both sides of our mouths and not feel justified in what they're doing?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not to mention, I mean, it's like, if you are just always rushing in there, fixing them, fixing them, fixing them, it's like if you had a baby and you always carried your baby would never learn to walk, ever.
Right.
How could they? They can't because you're always. And so if you're like that with a person with addiction, if Doug knows that he's just gonna get bailed out of jail, I'm not even sure they really wanna be bailed. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
just think everyone's following patterns, and somebody's gotta break that pattern.
Yeah.
And you have to do it for you, and you have to do it for the person suffering with addiction, and you have to do it for everyone else in the family you love. If you can't do it for yourself, you have to do it for everyone else.
Yeah, because you've gotta realize that everybody else is watching you. I think one of the biggest reasons we became enablers is because that's what mother role modeled
Yes,
to us,
yes. That's what
you
we
know?
thought we were supposed to do.
That's what we thought we were supposed to
I mean,
do.
she never looked at our father, who was a very sweet man, but still, and said, "This is unacceptable. This is not how you treat me. This is not how you treat anybody. I'm out of here."
I remember listening to her on the phone calling and, the last few years that daddy was alive, he finally reached a point where he couldn't really go to work.
Mm,
He was late a lot.
yeah.
And I remember her calling and lying about,
Yeah, like
daddy being.
Oma didn't know, right?
Yeah, like Oma didn't know, exactly, and
That's a
so,
secretary.
yeah, that was his secretary,
Yeah.
and, who really ran the company the last
Really,
few
she
years.
did, yeah.
We owe the fact that our mother had any money
Yes,
to Oma,
yeah.
and so you learn from that, you really, really learn from that, from that behavior. The other is, I think that looking around and paying attention to anybody I know. We met a man last night, Rob and I, went to go grab dinner, and we were having dinner with there was another couple there we knew, so the 4 of us just sat down to dinner together. Well, they both have completely quit drinking. So, the 4 of us, they had 2 non-alcoholic beers, and we had, Rob had his little mocktail he makes,
Yeah.
and of course, I had an iced tea. Well, the guy came out to serve it, and he goes, "Are you friends of Bill W?" Um, and, and because he said, "I'm a
Yeah,
friend of Bill W." And we were all talking about it saying, "No," basically that, that we're not. But he was talking about the fact that his wife cut him off completely. His family wouldn't have anything else to do. Because I asked him, I said, how did you" I said, "It's so unusual for somebody." He'd been sober, like.
you said we're friends of Bill W.'s wife.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, and anybody doesn't know what a friend of Bill W is,
AA.
it's the AA, and it's the confidentiality
Mhm,
of AA. But he said that he had been sober, I think, like 12 years or so, but he said it happened to him because he hit rock bottom. He said nobody would have anything to do with him
yeah.
anymore. His wife cut him off, his kids cut him off, his family cut him off, and it was a wake-up call that, it was the wake-up call he needed.
And it's not a guaranteed wake-up call. You don't know what people are gonna do or if they're
No.
gonna get better or if they're not. But one thing you do know is that if you don't do it, if you don't work on yourself, if you don't learn to manage your enabling, they're never gonna come to the point where they can turn around because you're keeping this whole thing going. You're keeping the circus going. It's
Yes.
not the person who's addicted, it's you. It's
It's you.
your life and you have a choice. Just like when Doug said to you, who the hell asked you to do this? Nobody asked you to do this. It's not your responsibility, and you have to come to a point where you can, juggle. And I would just like to stress that this doesn't happen overnight. Just because we're
No.
telling you to do it, you don't go, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." No, it's a process, and it took years. And like I said, I still get triggered and go into that spin, but at least I'm aware that I'm in that spin.
Yeah, I also think, like, just because I spent $1,000 on myself at the Grove Park Inn didn't mean I never gave my husband money again.
Right. But
But it's
you're
but it
much more aware of what you were doing, you're much more aware of the waste of it,
Yep,
and it made it easier to stop.
exactly.
Yeah.
Alright, what did you learn from today's podcast?
Well, I learned your big tip. I mean, I never thought about it that way ever, and that is like the that is, when people come to talk to us all the time, and, when people do, I'm gonna just say that. That is so good to take the money, at least do it once, the money that they
Sometime.
ask you for, and do something for yourself, and just see how that feels, and if that's better, that and what that gives you. That is such really good advice, Mare.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from today is that to take a breath and pay attention to your actions and really ask if your actions are helping
Mhm.
or if they're not doing anything, or if they're hurting, and pay attention more to your actions than even the words in your head or the advice that other people are giving you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What do you want to talk about next time?
Okay, this is what I wanna talk about, but you don't have to talk about if you have a better idea, that's fine.
Such
I
an
would like
enabler
to
for you
get
to
into
say.
the nitty-gritty of what people can expect from our systems, our medical system and our legal system as they're going through this.
I'm writing it down so I don't forget.
I have a little file I keep, Meredith, and I
I have no doubts about that. All right. We'll see you right back here next week, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about what you can and unfortunately cannot expect
yeah.
from our systems when it comes to loving, supporting, and just having to deal with an addict. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.